The kitchen carried the rich aroma of sautéed onions and peppers, a scent that always transported me back to easier days filled with family laughter around a crowded table. I flipped the burger patties in the pan, refusing to linger on the thought that I'd probably be dining solo once more. My life had narrowed to this modest carriage house behind the grand estate I'd built long ago with my late husband, a decade earlier. After his passing, I'd transferred nearly everything to my son, Marcus. "You're the man of the house now," I'd told him, hoping the weight of responsibility would strengthen him. Instead, he yielded to the endless demands of his wife, Brianna. Now I lingered here like outdated furniture, cherished but out of place. The door swung open with a creak, letting in a blast of cool fall air. Marcus and Brianna entered, both looking strained. My son avoided my gaze, nervously adjusting his jacket, while Brianna wore an exaggerated mask of distress. She flung her coat aside without greeting and sighed dramatically. "Mom, we need to talk," Marcus started, his voice shaky. Brianna jumped in immediately. "Mother Olivia, we're facing a real emergency." Her tone dripped with false sympathy that set my teeth on edge. She brought up the roof leak in the east wing, the one I'd already handed over my last $15,000 in savings for, believing it was urgent to prevent structural damage. Well, Brianna paused for effect. Hand on her chest, the costs, mold everywhere, beams completely rotted. We even had to cover some expenses ourselves. I stayed quiet, sensing the real blow coming, and I asked calmly, turning down the stove. "We can't take you on the river cruise," Brianna said bluntly. Triumph flickered briefly in her eyes before she feigned regret. Tickets jumped, and with these repairs, we barely scraped together enough for ourselves. Our nerves are fried. Marcus mumbled an apology, eyes full of guilt mixed with fear of his wife. "It's better you stay, Mom. Watch the house, the garden. We'll bring you a souvenir," Brianna added with a pout. "Someone has to keep things in order while we pinch pennies." My eyes drifted to the sparkling tennis bracelet on her wrist, real diamonds, far costlier than any roof work. She quickly covered it, but the damage was done. "All right," I replied evenly. "If there's no money, there's no money. You two rest up. I'll handle the house." They left relieved, expecting drama that never came. That night, while taking out trash, a crumpled invoice fluttered to my feet from their dumpster. Apex Voyages, Grand Owner Suite on the Golden Magnolia, $15,000, my exact amount. But they had no idea who they had just crossed, or that their luxury trip was about to become their worst nightmare. What happened when I made one quiet phone call? Stay tuned. My blood ran cold, then steady as a ship's engine. No tears, just icy resolve. They hadn't fixed any roof. They'd stolen my burial savings for their lavish getaway. While calling me a burden, I retrieved an old leather planner from my dresser and dialed a number unused for years. Supreing. "It's Olivia. I need my executive override on the Golden Magnolia now." Within minutes, I learned the cruise line was tied to holdings I'd controlled for years. The ship was practically mine. The next 2 days blurred into calculated action. While Marcus and Brianna packed noisily, I coordinated from behind closed doors. My attorney chuckled at the plan. "Temporary operational papers," Captain notified. I unpacked elegant clothes hidden away, cream linen suit, silk scarf, armor for the confrontation ahead. Departure morning brought chaos at the main house. I appeared in my old raincoat over finer attire, carrying a decoy bag. "I'm heading to my friend's place for her sciatica," I told them. "Back when you return." Brianna's joy was barely concealed. Perfect. Save on electricity. They sped off without hugs. 30 minutes later, a sleek black sedan arrived. The chauffeur bowed. "Mrs. St. James, Captain Harlan, awaits." At the New Orleans port, I bypassed the crowds via the VIP entrance. In the distance, I spotted them struggling with luggage and porters. They looked desperate. escorting me straight to the opulent owner's suite from its secure monitor. I watched them enter what they thought was their diamond suite paid with my money. "Lord Marcus, look at this balcony," Brianna squealed on the hidden feed. They popped champagne, toasting their freedom and mocking me, cruelly imitating my walk. Calling me naive, I sipped my own coffee, unmoved. Disgust, not pain. Their celebration was short-lived. Soon the key cards failed, and a polite steward delivered devastating news. How would they react when they discovered the administrative error came from the top? The real show was just beginning. An hour later, as the Golden Magnolia pulled away from the wharf, Marcus and Brianna returned to their suite flushed from drinks. The lock blinked red. Repeated attempts failed. A senior steward appeared. "I'm afraid there's been an administrative reallocation. This suite is reserved for priority shareholders." He handed them basic keys to cabin 012 lower deck, near the engines. Brianna exploded. "The bowels will sue." They stormed toward the VIP sundeck, where I sat peacefully with coffee and a book under an awning. The door slammed open. "Where's the manager?" Brianna shrieked. They scanned for staff, then froze upon seeing me in my crisp white suit and hat. "Mom," Marcus stammered. "What are you doing here?" "Enjoying the view until you ruined it with shouting," I replied calmly. Marcus turned aggressive. "Are you stalking us?" "Crazy old woman, get out." Brianna lunged, screaming I'd stolen their vacation. Her nails nearly grabbed my lapel when Captain Parlin's booming voice cut through. "Remove your hands from the owner of this vessel." Security flanked him. The captain explained my controlling interest in the entire Riverflow group and this ship. Marcus collapsed to his knees. Brianna turned ghostly pale. Their world shattered. They'd stolen from a woman who owned far more than they imagined. "Take them away," I told the captain quietly. They were escorted to the vibrating cabin 012 for a night of reflection. I let them simmer in fear all day. That evening, an elegant invitation arrived at their door. Would they try to charm their way back into my good graces over dinner, or would the full audit of their thefts finally break them? Don't miss what happened next. In the private Romanoff dining room, I waited at the head of the table with my meal. They entered hesitantly, Brianna in a black dress, Marcus disheveled. Hope lingered in their eyes. "Mom, what a misunderstanding," Brianna cooed, tearing at a napkin. "We just didn't want to worry you." The table before them stayed empty, except for a thick folder. No food, no wine. "You won't be served," I said flatly. "You've eaten at my expense long enough." I slid the folder over, forensic audits showing years of inflated withdrawals. Fake grocery bills, gas charges, and the $15,000 roof scam. Marcus paled. Brianna protested it was all him. I revealed I'd frozen accounts, revoked powers of attorney, and blocked their cards. They had nothing left. Security escorted them out. They dragged themselves back to the noisy cabin, clutching evidence of their greed. The next morning brought more drama. Brianna appeared alone in the solarium, tears flowing, claiming victimhood and promising divorce. But hidden recordings from their cabin told a very different story. What explosive evidence would destroy her act? Brianna sobbed convincingly in the solarium, blaming Marcus for everything and vowing to repay me. I listened, then played the audio from their engine room cabin, her real voice raging about declaring me incompetent, dumping me in a cheap facility, and selling the house. Nursing home. "The cheapest one?" I asked quietly. Her performance crumbled. She fled in terror. Less than an hour later, chaos erupted in my library. Brianna dragged the ship's doctor in, screaming I was delusional and dangerous. Marcus backed her, demanding sedation and guardianship papers. The doctor, my personal physician of 22 years, greeted me warmly and dismantled their scheme. He confirmed my perfect health and issued them a hefty bill for the false emergency. With their last desperate ploy exposed, they were truly broken. But the final blow came at our next port. What remote landing awaited them, and how did I ensure they faced the consequences of their actions alone? The solarium felt like a peaceful greenhouse oasis amid the river's flow, with lush plants and soft morning light filtering through the glass. I sat wrapped in a light blanket, herbal tea warming my hands, watching the misty banks glide by. The calm shattered when Brianna entered, her voice trembling with manufactured remorse. "Mother Olivia, I couldn't sleep," she whispered, eyes red and puffy. She perched on the edge of the wicker chair, twisting her hands. "Marcus lost control last night. He blamed me for everything. I swear I didn't know the full extent." She spun a tale of being manipulated, forced into luxury to uphold his image, claiming she always wanted a real family bond with me. "I'm leaving him as soon as we dock. I'll repay every cent. Just give me a chance to prove I'm not the monster you think." I poured her tea silently, letting her words hang. Then I picked up the tablet beside me. "This ship has excellent security systems, especially in the lower decks." Her hopeful smile faltered as I pressed play. The raw audio filled the space, her own venomous voice from the night before. "You spineless fool. Will declare her incompetent. Dump that old cow in the cheapest state home and sell everything." Brianna's face drained of color. She backed away, chair scraping loudly. That was heat of the moment. I didn't mean it. I stood, voice steady. "You never wanted family. You wanted a paycheck with legs? Sponsorship canceled. Go back to your husband." She fled in sobs. I returned to the view, feeling the weight of years lift slightly. Their final desperate scheme was already in motion. Minutes later, the library doors burst open with Brianna dragging the doctor and Marcus in tow. Would their attempt to have me declared insane finally work, or would it backfire spectacularly? The truth was about to explode. The private library smelled of aged leather and river air. I was reviewing old cargo logs when the doors flew open. Brianna hauled the ship's doctor by the sleeve, her face wild with determination. Marcus trailed behind, frantic. "Doctor, hurry. She's dangerous," Brianna shrieked. "She thinks she owns the ship. Dementia, paranoia. We need guardianship papers now." The doctor, Dr. Beaumont, my trusted physician for over 2 decades, finally pulled free. He adjusted his coat and approached me calmly. "Good morning, Mrs. St. James." "Steady at 120/80, thanks to the fresh air," I replied with a small smile. Marcus and Brianna froze in disbelief. The doctor turned on them coldly. "I've known Olivia for 22 years. Her mind is sharper than yours. This stunt suggests you need evaluation." He handed them a bill for the false emergency call, $500 they couldn't pay with blocked cards. "Attach it to your cabin debt. Police on shore if unpaid." Security escorted them out. I returned to my reports, the click of the lock sealing their defeat. Broken and penniless, they faced their final hours aboard. As the Golden Magnolia approached a remote landing the next morning, I prepared their true send-off. What desolate place would become their new reality, and how would they react when ordered off with nothing but their luggage? Thick fog hugged the Mississippi as we docked at Willow Bend, a quiet, forgotten landing in rural Arkansas. Ancient trees loomed over cracked concrete. I stood on the lower deck in a warm camel coat. Captain Harlan beside me, Marcus and Brianna shuffled into view, rumpled and whole. For a second, Marcus's face lit with foolish hope. "Mom, is this an excursion? You forgave us." "This is your stop," I said flatly. "Get off." They hesitated at the gangway. Security nudged them forward. Therefore, oversized suitcases waited on the pier like abandoned relics, alongside the unpaid bills. "What? You can't do this," Brianna wailed as her feet hit the ground. "We're in the middle of nowhere. No money, no cards. It's hundreds of miles home." Marcus rushed the railing. "Mama, please. We'll pay it all back. Don't leave us." I looked down at their small, desperate figures. "You told me there was no money for my ticket? Now you have none, and no ticket forward." Prove you're as self-made as you claimed. The gangway rose with a metallic clang. Engines roared, churning the water. Their curses and pleas faded into the distance as we pulled away. But this wasn't just an ending, it sparked my own new beginning. What decision did I make next that changed everything for me? As the Golden Magnolia gained speed, leaving Willow Bend behind, their tiny silhouettes vanished. No, Brianna threw a shoe that splashed uselessly into the river. Her screams carried faintly. "You witch. You'll die alone." I turned from the railing, the wind cool on my face. For the first time in years, warmth bloomed in my chest, not bitterness, but liberation. Captain Harlan removed his cap. "Back to New Orleans, ma'am. Or resume the original schedule." I breathed deeply, the air sweet with possibility. "Forget the schedule. Head north, all the way toward Minnesota. I want to see the fall colors on the upper river." He raised an eyebrow but smiled. "That's 2 more weeks. The maples turn like fire up there, they say." "Exactly. I've postponed to long work family obligations. No more." Laughter bubbled up unexpectedly as I threw my head back, ringing across the water and startling the gulls. But what deeper reflections came during those extra weeks of freedom? The real journey was only starting. The days that followed blurred into peaceful rhythm. Mornings in the solarium with tea and books. Afternoons watching golden forests slide past. Evenings with fine dinners and quiet decks under stars. I replayed events in my mind without regret. Marcus and Brianna had chosen greed over blood. I'd given them every chance, every resource. Their betrayal revealed who they truly were. Crew treated me with respect, befitting the owner. No more hiding in the carriage house. No more invisibility. One evening, as the sun painted the water crimson, I stood at the private deck rail. Cyprien called with updates, accounts secured, legal steps advancing. The estate would be protected, yet amid the beauty, a quiet question lingered. Could family ever be salvaged after such betrayal, or was this river my true fresh start? The answer surprised even me. Midway upriver, the foliage exploded in reds, oranges, and golds, a sea of fire reflecting my renewed spirit. I hosted small dinners for select crew and shared stories of building the logistics. Empire decades ago, memories surfaced. My husband's vision, the long nights negotiating deals, the respect once commanded by the St. James name. I'd stepped back for family, only to be discarded. Brianna's and Marcus's faces haunted me briefly, but I released them like leaves on the current. They were young, capable if not of honesty, then at least survival. The lesson was theirs to learn. As we neared the northern stretches, an unexpected message arrived via satellite phone. What did it mean for my future, and how did it tie back to the life I'd reclaimed? The message was from an old business associate, congratulating my return and proposing a partnership revival. It felt like the river itself was opening new paths. I laughed again that night, the same freeing sound from departure day. Freedom tasted better than any revenge. The remaining voyage passed in reflection and planning. Upon return to New Orleans, I'd restructure everything with clarity and strength. No more enabling weakness. No more silent suffering. Back at the estate weeks later, what changes did I implement? And did Marcus and Brianna ever attempt contact? The final chapter held one more surprise. Weeks after docking, the carriage house stood empty. I'd moved into the main estate, updating documents and securing assets. The garden flourished under new care. A single letter arrived postmarked from a small Arkansas town. Marcus's handwriting, pleading for forgiveness, promising change. Brianna had left him, according to the note. I read it once, then filed it away. Some bridges stay burned for good reason, my days now filled with travel plans and renewed purpose. But the greatest reward was the quiet knowledge that I'd chosen myself. What final reflection closed this chapter? Looking back, the cruise wasn't about punishment, Tit was about reclaiming power stolen through manipulation. I'd built an empire. They tried to bury its founder. The river taught me flow. Release what no longer serves. I sailed forward, heart light, future bright with autumn colors and endless horizons. Friends, that's the full tale of resilience and justice. But which part surprised you most? Drop your city in the comments. Back at the estate, after the extended river journey, the grand house felt different, live with possibility rather than echoes of betrayal. I had the carriage house refurbished and rented it out to a young family, turning a place of isolation into something positive. The gardens bloomed under professional care, and I finally hired a small staff who respected boundaries. Marcus's letter sat in a drawer, unopened again. Reports from contacts confirmed he and Brianna had made it back, eventually hitchhiking, odd jobs, and plenty of hardship. Brianna had indeed left him shortly after, seeking new opportunities elsewhere. Part of me felt a twinge of maternal instinct, but I reminded myself of the recordings, the audits, and the cold calculation in their eyes. I met with Cyprian and Solomon in the newly refreshed study. Full restructuring, I instructed. No more loose access. The St. James name returns to strength. We reviewed documents, transferring management shares, and updating trusts. The empire I'd built decades ago in trucking and river logistics was mine once more. Evenings brought quiet satisfaction. I sat on the veranda with coffee, watching sunsets over the property I'd nearly lost to greed. The bracelet incident, the fake roof story, the mocking laughter on the hidden cameras, all of it had been a painful but necessary awakening. With my affairs secured, I began planning the next adventure. But an unexpected visitor arrived one crisp afternoon, forcing me to confront whether true forgiveness was possible. What happened when the past knocked on my door again? The doorbell rang during afternoon tea. The housekeeper announced a hesitant young man, my grandson, whom I'd barely seen in years. He stood awkwardly in the foyer, clutching a small package. "Grandma Olivia, I heard what happened on the cruise," he said quietly. "Dad's been different since. Rough shape. He asked me to bring this." Inside the package was a simple apology note and a small wooden carving he'd made as a boy, something I'd treasured. Emotions stirred, but I kept my composure. "Your father chose his path," I replied gently. "Actions have consequences." We talked for over an hour. He shared stories of their struggles post-landing, sleeping in shelters, arguing constantly, the reality of self-made life without my support. No excuses, just raw honesty from the younger generation. I didn't promise reconciliation with Marcus, but I offered my grandson a college fund reconsideration and occasional visits. Small steps, guarded ones. That meeting planted a seed of hope for the family line, but my own journey was far from over. What major decision did I make regarding the company that surprised everyone, including myself? Months later, I stood before the board of Riverflow Holdings, dressed in a sharp-tailored suit, silk scarf at my neck. I announced my return to active oversight. Gasps rippled through the room. Many thought the old lady in the cottage was long retired. "We expand north," I declared. New routes inspired by the fall colors I finally saw. The proposal passed with enthusiasm. Captain Harlan was promoted to oversee fleet operations, a reward for his loyalty on the Golden Magnolia. I traveled more short river trips than international flights. The woman who'd been told to stay home now chased horizons she'd ignored for too long. No more shrinking myself for ungrateful children. One quiet evening, sorting old photos, I found one of my late husband and me on our first riverboat. I smiled, realizing I'd honored his legacy best by reclaiming my own power. As seasons changed again, a final letter arrived from Marcus. Would reading it bring closure, or reopen old wounds? The answer reshaped my future in an unexpected way. Marcus's second letter was longer, more humble. He detailed hitting rock bottom. finding work in logistics ironically, in a junior role at a competitor firm and starting therapy. Brianna was gone, chasing her own illusions elsewhere. He asked nothing material, only understanding. I read it twice by the fireplace. The icy resolve from the cruise had thawed into wisdom. I wrote back briefly, prove change through consistent actions. The door isn't locked forever, but it must be earned. Life continued richly. I hosted charity events on the riverboats, mentored young women in business, and sailed whenever the mood struck. The betrayal had been a catalyst, transforming resentment into fierce independence. Looking back over that transformative year, one truth stood crystal clear. What was the greatest lesson from this entire ordeal, and how did it redefine family, power, and second chances? The greatest lesson was this: never dim your light to make others comfortable. I'd built an empire, raised a son, and nearly faded into invisibility, all in the name of family. Their greed exposed the illusion. The cruise wasn't revenge, it was reclamation. I now live fully traveling the Mississippi in autumn, expanding the business, nurturing selective relationships. Marcus visits occasionally, respectful and changed. We rebuild slowly with clear boundaries. Brianna remains a closed chapter to anyone listening. If you're undervalued or taken for granted, remember the golden magnolia. Strength often hides in quiet observation until the moment to act arrives. Friends, did this story resonate with you? Which part moved you most, the discovery in the trash, the doctor's revelation, or the final departure at Willow Bend? Tell me your city in the comments. Like and subscribe for more tales of resilience. Your support keeps these stories sailing, with love and respect, until our next journey together.